In Timun Mas, Butoyjo promises her mother to have the baby, but under one condition, that she should pay Butoyjo later on. So she spent her life taking care of Timun Mas with fear and constantly worrying about the moment the debt would eventually be collected. Hi everyone, my name is Nsdc and I'm from SMA Labschool, Kebayoran. Today I'll be talking about how this house would adopt student loan mechanism in Indonesia. Now, in this debate, the government must prove that student loans solves educational inequality without creating bigger financial burdens for students. Now, let me state my stance that I believe there are other ways to help students who struggles with finance other than having to pay debt, which is why I believe I am hardly against this motion. Before we get started, I'd like to say that the expectations stated by the proposing team are too unrealistic. First of all, we can't just compare situation in Singapore and Indonesia. We need to stop being delusional. Oh my God, we need to actually wake up. Because in Singapore, people are paid based on a standardized wage, where the amount of salary given are already measured and considered. They are paid based on their working hours. They are paid based on their efforts. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, people are overworking. People are working past their working hours, yet they are still underpaid. So, when the government says that students can simply pay later after getting a job, they ignore the fact. They ignore the reality that getting a well-paying job in Indonesia is not guaranteed. So, paying after graduating, after getting employed is possible only if you live in Singapore or other grown countries. So I hardly agree that we can't implement Singaporeans' policy in our country. First, let's talk about our students' mental health and well-being in Indonesia. So, students here are under a lot of pressure, a lot of academic pressure especially. Now, they spend most of the time chasing deadlines, assignment, expectations from both schools and family. Adding student loans into the system just adds more into it, like adding salt to injury. This pressure often worsens a student performance in academic. Now, after graduating, the pressure does not end. The pressure does not disappear. It comes worse because when you're expected to immediately find stable jobs, we pay loans, and in many cases also help students and their family, help support their families financially. So, the pressure does not stop when you graduated. It comes worse, and your adulthood is taken away. Now, this issue adds another issue where a student mindset is to choose majors not based on their passion, not based on their interests, but based on wage. They often think which job will give me more money? Which job would make me rich? Which job could help me pay this student loan as soon as possible? Now, this makes jobs lessen in Indonesia. We already suffer economically. And by this mindset, many jobs would die. Creativity and innovation decrease. And educations are only for economic purposes only. And this is already happening today, happening now, even in my classroom, where high schoolers are given the option to choose whether they choose science studies or social studies. And many people who aces in social choose science because they believe that the job offers are more guaranteed and promise. Now, do you want to worsen the situation? Now, I believe that debt is not a solution. And I quote, "A long life debt is better than no excess at all." Hey, we're living in the big 2026. Why are we normalizing debt to students who had just finished high school? I believe that there are other alternatives. Now, let us first identify the first problem and the only and the real problem in Indonesia. Even the proposition themselves admitted that the biggest issue is affordability and unequal access to education. So these issues is for people who are struggling financially. How do you guarantee that people who are struggling financially would willingly choose to be in debt, especially in a long life one? They are already suffering for living needs. They are already suffering to pay another debt, to pay many things. And I believe they would support my solution instead. As an alternative solution, I would propose my solution, which is to decrease tuition fees and increase state funding for education. So instead of encouraging student loans, the government should focus on reducing tuition fees and increase state funding for education. Now, this might sound just like the movie 10 Things I Hate About You, too good to be true. But it is already implemented. For example, in Germany, where most of the university are free. And it is possible because there in Germany, the government heavily focuses and subsidizes on education. Now, the student loan mechanism is just a delay to the problem. The student loan mechanism just delays the problem until adulthood, while my side directly reduces the cost of education itself. Now, would you rather just delay the problem or reduce the problem? Of course, you choose to reduce the problem, which is why I stated this solution. But at the end of the day, we all agree that education in Indonesia should be more accessible. But paying after getting a job does not end the long life debt. It is just the same, but sugar-coated. So we are not against education, but we are against the way the opposing team has said, which is by paying debt, which is by student loans. My name is Noah Kamumut from SM Labschool Kebayoran. Thank you very much.